Hi, Sandra and Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to learning all about compliance today with you guys. I know you are the experts in the field. And as I said, I've got some questions from my mastery members. So I'm really looking forward to a good chat with you today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Over to you to introduce yourselves. And who is HCPG?
Hi, so I'm Sandra, my colleague Sarah, and we are HCPG, which is Healthcare Professionals Governance. We are all about governance. We want to make it interesting, want to make it fun. We know a lot of people don't find it interesting and fun, and we're here and we aim to change that. We're both physios by background, but we're working with lots of other professions as well, because the standards are all derived from the same acts, and so the framework is very similar. We're currently working on a series with some osteopaths, and we found their standards. The overlap between those and physios is considerable. And we've also delivered training to GPs, naturopaths, rehab therapists, multidisciplinary clinics, and the themes we found are relevant to all. But as I say, by background, we're two physios. I'm an outpatient MSK physio by background, still do a little bit of clinical work, and also I'm on the board of a national advocacy charity. And Sarah, would you like to say a little bit about your?
Yeah, so I'm an inpatient physio, and I've also been a advisor on the CQC through inspection, and I've also run a care home. And along with working with HCPG, I'm also training to be a psychotherapist.
And Sarah and I together used to manage the largest independent healthcare company physio team in the UK, and that's how we met. We then moved away doing different things and then came back together and set up HCPG.
Brilliant. And so presumably you're then medical specialists, and so that's your kind of sector rather than aviation and whatever other sectors.
Yeah,
purely medical.
Healthcare is the area that we're in, and we're very specific in the area that we work, because we've decided we're, we've got a niche, and that's the bit that we've developed our expertise in.
So I guess a good starting point might be an analogy that I've heard you guys use before. So I've heard you do some other podcasts, and you talk about the kitchen and the restaurant analogy. So can you maybe just share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course we can. Basically, what we say to clinical professionals that we're working with is, for clinical professionals are very focused on the delivery of the care, what we call the front of house, the restaurant, and getting that Michelin star, and they gather outcomes and they do checks at the front of the house. But what we always say is that you can deliver the greatest care, but if someone gets food poisoning from the kitchen, then suddenly your star rating is compromised. So where we focus is we focus on the kitchen. So the foundations and the basics, are they in place? Can we give you a 4 or 5 star rating when you've worked with us, so that you know that the foundations that underpin that clinical front end of the business are equally robust? It is no use having great reputation, being on the bottom corner of the page 5 for your business, if suddenly a patient has an injury because the equipment wasn't serviced properly or the plinth broke, and then you end up with a claim and suddenly you're all over page 5 rather than just a corner. So we're here about getting the foundations right to protect your brand.
Okay, so I guess then, so what is it that drives your interest to be in the kitchen? Okay, so so we have a real interest in compliance, and this comes from, as Sandra said earlier, we work together for an independent healthcare company, and we've audited hundreds of clinics, hundreds of physiotherapy clinics, and we've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, and we've seen some excellent things, and we've also seen some things that really worried us. And the overarching thing is that physios don't know what they don't know. So there's that unconscious incompetence that we found with physios running clinics. So we wanted to help them and support them to be able to evidence all the regulations and standards that they should be adhering to. So that's where our interest in compliance comes from. Okay. And yeah, and I think the kind of question around why the area of focus is actually important, it comes back to that analogy of
you know, if things go wrong in the kitchen, you're going to have a big problem filling your restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And we know that, as we say, Silly, we know that the ethos of the clinicians is to keep their clients safe and to deliver the best possible care. But what Sarah and I found is that so often the foundation for this is a bit shaky because people just don't know, as Sarah said. So it then means if there's an issue or there's a complaint or there's a referral back to a regulator, if this is investigated, then you could find that the evidence isn't very robust around those foundations. So we are really here to help you try and mitigate that risk. And so we can help and assist you if you've got an insurer with a claim, or help you get the evidence together if you want to make a tender application on a contract. So we're there to uphold that ethos of keeping the patient safe, but also about making sure your staff and your team are safe as well, and making sure that if it goes wrong, because we're dealing with human beings, not being hands on a production line, you've got as much evidence to show that you did everything you could to try and avoid that happening.
Okay, and based on your experience, what would you say is the most common area of non-compliance?
We found that probably the most common areas is around informed consent, consent policies, use of chaperones, making sure that you've got safeguarding in place, and also documentation. We find that documentation quite often doesn't come up to where it should be. So that's where we find the main areas.
And that's really interesting, because I think, you know, one of the things that we are talking about today is that a lot of our clients, a lot of my clients don't know what they don't know. But some of those areas that you've mentioned, they know that they have to have a proper chaperone policy in place. They know that they have to do their documentation correctly. But then I guess the element that they don't know is what the compliant specifications are, because there's just an overwhelm of information.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think it's again about what should a consent policy look like, what does informed consent actually mean, how do they document it in their notes, all of those things that they know they should be doing, but they have to go and really look it up and investigate it, and there's a chance they can get it wrong as well, because there's nobody there to guide and support them.
Yeah, because it's probably an overwhelming amount of information and guidelines, and you know, I suppose it's like anybody, if you're trying to do something that you're not skilled in, so you know, like getting your accounts right, you know, there's an overwhelming amount of information that we can go and search and look and see, oh, how do I make sure that my balance sheet looks all right, and how do I make sure that all the inputting for my profit and loss statement is correct. But as a layman, we don't actually know every single item. And that's why, you know, coming to experts like yourself for this really important getting your kitchen in order sounds like a perfectly good idea. So I guess one of the questions that one of my mastery members asked was, so where to start when you need to review all things? It's just like kind of that overwhelm of, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. Where on earth do I start?
Where we would advise you that someone starts is they get all the standards that they've actually got to comply with, and we would say, you know, to audit yourself against those standards to find out which areas are really making your service vulnerable. And we appreciate, as you said, this is not a quick process to do. I mean, Sarah and I have done it a lot, and we had experience in it, and it still took us a long time to bring together what we do, because there is so much stuff out there. But people need to really understand, what do the standards say, then they can audit against them, and that will then almost give them that roadmap as to where do I go next, and working out what are those key areas where I think I'm potentially non-compliant, so how do I go forward?
Yeah. And so another question was, well, what should be on your 5 to 9? What should be the 5 to 9 items on the essentials to practice checklist?
Yeah, so you should be looking at consent, chaperones, safeguarding, GDPR, notes documentation, and also working alone. Those are the ones that you really.
So those would be your top ones to go to first.
Yes.
Make sure that those are right
Yeah.
before anything else. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like almost if you're flying an aeroplane and one of those things is on the checklist, you need to be able to land that plane safely.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
And I think, Celia, reinforcing what Sarah was just saying earlier as well, is in those items that are at the top that you found from auditing, it's making sure you really understand what is it asking me for? What does that standard want? Does it want a policy? As you said, what is in that policy? Those are the key areas, but really expand what do I need in that key area, really work out, and that's the stuff you need to gather, because it won't stand alone. It's how is it implemented, how are you monitoring it, etc., etc. So people, develop that knowledge, or basically find someone who has got the knowledge where you can learn from. But please, a plea from us, don't just buy somebody else's and put your name on it and stick it on the shelf, because it doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying is actually it's not just about having the policy in place, it's having the implementation in place. In a different sector. So obviously work with clinics that have self-employed and employed team members, and the self-employed contracts, the self-employed contract might very well say it's you're self-employed, but then when the HMRC come and investigate and they look and say, well, your contract says that you're allowed substitution, but do you actually allow the substitution? And they're like, no, we don't allow our team members to just put anyone in when they go on holiday. And so whilst their contract says that they're compliant, their actual act is not. And I'm pretty sure it must be exactly the same in your sector. The policy could be wrong in the first place and implemented incorrectly, or your policy could be squeaky clean and completely compliant, but you don't act on it. Do you find that? Yeah. And in terms of the physio practices or osteos or speech and language therapists, what do you think they get right most of the time? So what are the what are the policies or the compliance that they are really kind of generally when you go into most practices, they get that right?
Well, at the moment, we find that the GDPR is up to scratch because there's been so much in the news about it. And so they've been on training courses and they really do understand the GDPR, but it's taken like something like that for that to be, they're really on it and they're okay about it. And so that's what we do find. But again, they can sometimes miss out. So they've got a fantastic GDPR policy, but they haven't got anything like a privacy notice on their website, which is part of that. So they can miss out certain things, but they're pretty good on GDPR. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And what would you say the most common area is that your phone rings for? So the most common thing that you help practices with?
But I would say it's usually the two extremes. It's either the simple thing like a policy at the beginning and getting them going on a policy, or it's the other end where people are saying, I just don't know where to start. Can we perhaps do an audit with yourselves? I get basically we then give them a roadmap that's prioritised so they know where to start. And often what will happen, Celia, is people will come to us for something small and then they end up having a bit more and having a bit more and having a bit more as they realise that actually there's more to this than I actually thought, and it's going to take me a lot of time to do this, whereas these ladies are just going to point me in the right direction and help me do it.
I can imagine it's like opening a can of worms. They can't come to you and they think they just want their GDPR sorted, and suddenly there's just a can of worms of, oh gosh, okay, well your GDPR is right, but what about this? What about that? What about that? So yeah. There was also a question about what's it kind of the saying, if people are using an HR company already, what is the difference between you guys and an HR company?
So we don't pretend to be an HR company. We're not an HR company. We are very much specialised in looking after the governance side of things for physios and osteos, etc., to do with the standards and regulations. That is what we do. So there might be a question about health, about human resources, and again with health and safety, but we're not the experts. So we point them to where they need to go or suggest that they get another consultant in for that. So we really stick to what we know.
Yeah. What do they say? Jack of all trades and master of none. So you're mastering your trade.
Yes.
And if you could change one thing around compliance, what would it be and why?
It would be inspection, because one of Sarah and I's biggest concerns and why we started this, which means we're in a market where currently it's not inspected because it isn't externally inspected, although we do that. The public think that these clinical professionals are inspected and that people come out and visit them. And we think that does make us very vulnerable, because as the public voice grows, and there are groups of patients out there now, and people talk about using the patient voice, they are raising their concerns about the fact that there are individuals out there looking after their healthcare, doing procedures where no one's checking, is their consent fully informed? No one's checking, are their premises safe? No one's checking, do they have all those checks and balances that they should have? So we really feel that inspection, we can feel it's coming. It's definitely coming. We've spoken to the CQC about this as well, you know, and it will need a change of act to do that, but it feels as though something's coming in some way, and it feels as though it's been coming from all sides. You have the public starting to say, we need the reassurances. We look at Ofsted for a school. How can a clinical practice that looks after your health not be inspected by someone independent? So you've got the patients coming. You've got some of the regulators saying, actually, this should be happening. You know, we're doing some and not all. We've got to review this. And then you've also got clinicians within the profession themselves are now starting to say, actually, we would like to have evidence that shows we have been independently checked. It gives us the kind of the safety net of knowing we've been checked, but also we want to display it. We want to shout about it. We want to say, come to us because our kitchen is safe, as well as our restaurant being very good. So it's inspection.
And it elevates the entire profession as well, because I think that there'll probably be clinicians that will be wanting this to happen because of some of their colleagues, you know, of the way they've seen other people practice. So I think that it can be driven by actually you just wanting to be proud of your profession and you're wanting the profession to develop. So yeah, I can kind of see that it will come one day. Just kind of how quickly that will happen, who knows?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Sorry, so the other thing concerned for us as well, Celia, is as professionals, we are all signing at our renewal time to say that we do adhere to the standards. So actually, personally, for our integrity, we should adhere to the standards. And if we don't, then you know, we should be doing it anyway without all these other drivers that are now doing it. And it does enable us to be able to say our profession is safe. We've got checks from the beginning to the end of the patient journey.
Yeah, it's almost not good. It's not enough just to be regulated.
Yeah, you need. I mean, Sarah and I always say the standards and the regulations are actually very good. You know, it's people's understanding and gathering of the portfolio of evidence around them is where there's the gap. And so, you know, if people did them better and then someone checked them, because at the moment we do have checks, but it's just around our CPD for if you're just looking at physios. And so what we're saying is it needs to be, you know, it needs to be more than that. Are your premises really fit for you to be practicing from?
Yeah. So tell me, what does HCPG offer?
Okay, so we're very much bespoke it. We're not a tick box company. We really believe in being with you and supporting you on your journey, whether that is you want some policies. We would never just send you policies and say, right, put your logo on it and off you go. It always comes with a phone call. It always comes with explanation and support about what this policy is about and do you really understand it. So we can start just from one policy, a group of policies, right the way up. We have 3 audit levels. We have an entry level, a support level, and a partner level. So you could come in once. We always insist that we do an initial audit, and from that we can then decide what level we think you need. And anything that you do get from us and buy from us, we always make sure we re-audit. Ethically, we can't go and do an audit then find it's really lacking and then just leave. So one of our packages will always have 2 audits in them. And we can go from a policy, some training around consent, some training around what you need to set up in private practice, right up to full-blown year audit, partner level. When you're with us for a year, we do training with you, we help you with all your policies, all your templates. So we're very much bespoke it to what the physio needs.
Yeah. And so what type of businesses do you work with? Is it, what have you found where your market is right now? And like, what are your kind of most common clients that you work with?
It's been really interesting. We thought it would be, the high street clinics, but it's been a real mix of everything. So we've been working with individual high street clinics, we've been working with group clinics, we've even been working with independent hospitals who have approached us to work with their therapy teams. And we've also been working with organisations where it's a conglomerate that's delivering a large contract and they want some governance training for their staff and their team. So we've done evening sessions, day sessions, full audits. So it actually has been a real mix. We thought it would be mainly the high street. That's what we thought we were starting. And actually it's just gone everywhere, and it's gone beyond. So it's gone to osteopaths. It's now looking at other areas. It's just great.
Okay, so it's not just physio and not just what you thought it would be.
No.
Yeah. So a much bigger need than you anticipated in the start of your journey.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
And so how do we access the training then? If any of my clients want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch, and what is your kind of journey to get a client on board?
Yeah, so we do, we have a newsletter. You can sign up to our newsletter, which gives the latest updates around legislation and guidance. It also, we're running training courses for setting up in private practice around governance. We've just run one recently that was very successful. So we'll do training around informed consent, chaperones, notes documentation, risk assessments, all of those things. So if you go onto our website, www.hcpg.co.uk, you can book a call with us and have a chat about what you think you might need, and take it from there.
Brilliant. Anything else to add in terms of the value that you add to your clients?
I think
what are the top things that your clients say to you?
Well, we've got on the website, we've got the testimonial, quite a lot of testimonials if people want to have a look, see. But the top things they say is, do you know what? I understand governance now. And when I bring a new service in or I bring a new piece of equipment, I'll think, I need this, I need that, I must have this signed off, I need to check this. But also, I think, one of our clients was saying when they went for a tender, suddenly, when they looked at the specification, they thought, I've got that, I can show them that, I can talk about this. So I think it's that, for Sarah and I, it's that excitement of people no longer being unconsciously incompetent. They kind of get it. And that sums up what one person said. I feel as though me and my team and I now get it and we know what we need to do. But coming back to where started from, what we want to do is make it fun along the way. So we see ourselves as part of your team, joining in with you, and and making sense of it. Once you make sense of it, suddenly it's not this great big animal that you don't know where to start.
I think I heard in one of your podcasts about people kind of thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to go into the seminar, it's going to be dead boring, and walked away saying, oh, actually that was quite fun. And I'm pretty sure that most of my clients would not put excitement and compliance in the same sentence. So I think that would be that's a really good kind of achievement, that you're finding people are actually getting excited about it and just taking that, because I think there must be an element of fear around it as well, when you don't know what you don't know. And so there is that fear, and you're kind of converting that for people to feel more comfortable with it. And it's not so scary after all, and it is fixable. And actually there are experts out there that can do it for you and do it with you, rather than you kind of fumbling about in the dark trying to figure your way out, and potentially getting yourself into hot water down the line.
Yes, we're very we really come in as your supportive friend, really. It's there is no stick. We don't do stick. It's about, you know, we're here to help. What do you need? And also when we run our training courses, we never record them because we want people to feel being able to talk and being open and saying, well, actually, I don't have that. You know, and that's when they're going to feel safe and in a safe environment to have a really good discussion about why they need it. You know, and so we're very much about being supportive and not critical.
We talk, Celia, about using poo and Piglet from AA Mill, you know, where Pooh says to Piglet, what is the bravest thing you've ever asked? And he responds, help. And that's what we say to people. It's the first step is being brave and just saying help. And once you've asked us, we're away then, that's it.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great way to end this interview. So as for anyone listening, you know, please do get in touch with Sandra and Sarah and ask for help in compliance. You don't expect your patients to self-treat themselves on their own without your guidance. Don't expect, you know, we don't expect you to be doing your compliance requirements on your own, fumbling around in the dark, wondering if you're getting it right, wondering what you don't know. So please do reach out to Sandra and Sarah. And if you have any other questions for them that I haven't asked, I'm sure they'd be very happy to answer any of those questions on a call. And you can book that through their website, which will be on the slide at the end of this show. So Sarah and Sandra, any final passing comments?
No, just thank you very much, Celia, for the opportunity to be able to share what we're sort of our journey, where we are, you know, with your members. Thank you very much.
It's my absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me. And I'm sure we'll be in touch more and maybe have more of these kind of interviews. So thank you very much for joining me, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.